We need the breath of God to be the people of God, to be merciful like God, to follow in these teachings that Jesus gives to us. We need God. We need that breath. And I believe that we experience that when we are together, that is how God intended us to be, that we would gather together and worship together, that we would build on each other, that we would experience the Spirit of God and the abilities of God as we are together. And that's why I think church is so important, worship is so important, being here is so important, because I'll just tell you that a lot of times it's just too much for me. It's too much for me to try to be faithful by myself. And I need you. I need the fellowship. I need the church. Be merciful just as your Father is merciful, Jesus says in a sermon. And if we read that quickly, we can say, that's easy enough. Being merciful is easy. In fact, I bet that if we sat for a moment, we could think of many ways in which we have been merciful to people in our lives. If you are children, if you have parents or ever had parents, probably there was a time that you were merciful to your parents when they just went overboard. If you are a parent, I imagine there are times you were merciful to children. You've been merciful to your friends. You've given $1 or so to people who are in need. When we read it like that, be merciful just as your Father is merciful, that seems so easy. And in fact, when we think about the mercies of the Lord that we sang, that we could sing forever, when we think about God, we know that God is a very merciful God, that God has extended mercy to us. We know that because of Jesus, that God would risk his own Son, would give his own Son to live with us, to come down and be with us, to teach us, to show us, and to die for us. And we know that God is merciful. And if we just think real quickly about it, we think about how easy being merciful is. I imagine that you see many ways in which you are merciful. But when we dig a little deeper into what it is to be merciful, and certainly when we compare it with how merciful God has been for us, we know that mercy is a little bit harder. Because mercy costs something. In order to be merciful, you have to give up something. And you have to allow yourselves to be vulnerable. You're giving up something in order to be merciful. One time a mother approached Napoleon, and she was seeking pardon for her son. The emperor replied to her that the young man had committed the same offense twice, and justice demanded his death. But I don't seek justice, the mother replied. I plead for mercy. But your son does not deserve mercy, Napoleon replied. Sir, the woman cried, it would not be mercy if he deserved it. Mercy is all that I seek for. Well then, the emperor said, I will have mercy. And he spared the woman's son. It would not be mercy if he deserved it, the mother cried out. I know that it's not fair. I know that it is not justice. But I'm crying for mercy. I'm asking you to give up something. Napoleon, to do this, had to give up justice to supply mercy. And we have to give up something, and it makes us vulnerable, because if this young man committed this offense twice, certainly he was capable of doing it a third and fourth and fifth time. That's the vulnerability of mercy. So when we think deeper about mercy, we understand that we have to give up something, lots of times something very big, meaningful, that makes us vulnerable to be merciful. And then as we dig deeper into what Jesus has already said, what he says leading up to this verse, be merciful as your Father is merciful, we begin to see how very hard it can be. But I say to you to listen, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. From anyone who takes away your coat, do not withhold even your shirt. Give to everyone who begs from you, and if anyone takes away your goods, do not ask for them again. Love your enemies. Turn the other cheek. Give to those who beg from you. Do not ask for things that are taken from you to be brought back. That costs a lot. We're giving up a lot if we do that, right? We are. But what we begin to see here in this sermon is Jesus bringing to reality, showing us the reality of how we do that which Jesus has come to do, how we take part in leveling things out. Remember last week I talked about how Luke, we call this the Sermon on the Plain, on the level place. And Luke says, different than Matthew, Luke says that Jesus came down to a level place. And last week I said that I believe that Luke is speaking more theologically than geographically, that Luke is saying that here is Jesus who is leveling things out, just like the prophecy in Isaiah 40. The one crying out in the wilderness, prepare the way for the Lord. Every valley shall be lifted up. The rough places made plain. We're going to level things out. And here, we see that mercy is calling us to level these things out by providing mercy to those who are above us or that we perceive are above us, and those that are below us. That we are working in both places to bring people into a place where they can be in a better relationship with us. Love your enemies. Well, when Jesus is saying this, the enemies at the time were the Romans. The Romans were the ones who were striking people in the face and could get away with it. The Romans were the ones that were causing people to walk extra places. They were even asking people to give up their coats. And the Romans were the enemies. They were enemies because they occupied Israel. They were an occupying force, and they were not very friendly. In fact, they were taxing the people to starvation. These are the enemy. They are above. And Jesus says, how do we do that? What do we do with these people? We show them mercy. How? We decide that we are not going to use their same tactics. They hate us. They think they can lord over us. They think that they are above us and we are beneath them. And I say we love them. If someone strikes you on the other cheek, do you know what's happening? And you turn the other cheek to that person, you know what's taking place? You are saying to them that I am not going to respond on your level. I am not using your methods of hate and violence. You see, something that's important for us to understand about this teaching of turning the other cheek, that this is not a cowardice move. This is not bowing down and being a coward and allowing yourselves to be run over. In fact, it is resistance. It is resistance to those who think that they have something above you. I am going to turn my other cheek to you. You slap me on one side, I am going to turn my other cheek, and I'm saying to you, I am not going to respond the way you respond. I will reveal my cheek to you and give it to you to slap me again, because I am going to put it on you to make a decision. Either you are going to continue your violent ways, or you're going to see me as an equal. You see? And that's mercy. Mercy isn't cowering down. Mercy is saying, we're going to go to a higher standard, and we're going to invite you to join us in that standard. We see this best played out, I believe, in the civil rights movement, when they continually said to the people, we are not going to strike back, we are not going to respond with violence, we are not going to hit, we are not going to go to their level, because we are not trying to overcome them, we only want them to see us as equal. We love them. This is what the people behind the civil rights movement pushed and pushed and pushed. We love these people. We are trying to regain them, not overcome them. And so they did things like turn their cheek and say, you can choose to continue your violence, or we can come together. You see, mercy is reaching up even to those that lord things over us, those that are above us, and doing the things that will allow them to come to the level place where we are. It's not about fighting back or striking back or hating. And that's hard. It's hard to make yourself that vulnerable, but that's mercy. Now, I have to say this, I have to say it. Side note, if you are in an abusive relationship where you are being physically, emotionally, sexually abused, you do not have to stay in that relationship. That is not what this teaching is about, okay? You do not have to do that. I don't want you to hear that, okay? If you are being abused physically, emotionally, sexually, this is not what Jesus is saying here. You get out of that relationship, you put yourself at a safe distance from that relationship, and then from there you provide mercy. You don't provide mercy by allowing the person to continue to harm you. Okay? We got to say that. The church has not said that enough. It has to be said. Get out of those relationships. Put yourself in a safe place. But there is mercy. There is mercy by putting yourself out of that and then finding the right way to respond. We can do that without allowing ourselves to continue to be harmed. The turning of the cheek is different. It is a resistance in a different way. And so there is this invitation to mercy for those that are above, to try to bring them into a place where relationship can be restored. But there's also this sense of mercy that Jesus is talking where we reach down to those that are in need, that those that we perceive are below us. And that can be just as difficult to do because we still have to give up something in order to show mercy. A few years after the death of President Calvin Coolidge, this story came out about how he woke up one night to find that there was a burglar searching through his stuff trying to rob him. He was in a hotel room and he woke up and he noticed there was a burglar taking his stuff. And he responded by saying, "Could you please leave the chain to my watch? Because there is an engraving on that that means a lot to me. Will you please leave that?" And then he entered into this conversation with this burglar. And he found out that the burglar was a college student who was broke, did not have money for his hotel room or to purchase a train ticket to get back to school. And so President Coolidge took his wallet, took all the money that was in his wallet out, and he gave it to the burglar. He said, "Here, this should cover it, $31. And when he handed it to him, he said, "This isn't a gift, this is a loan. You're not robbing me, I am loaning you this money. You're going to pay it back to me." And then he told the burglar that he needed to leave the same way that he came in so that he did not alert the Secret Service. And there is this sense of mercy. What could he have done? Maybe what he should have done was to yell out for the Secret Service. They would have come in, they would have apprehended the burglar, they would have charged him, and that would have taken care of it. But instead, the president here responded in mercy. He sought to understand, why would someone be a burglar? Why would they come and steal? He understood that they had a need. Was it wrong? Absolutely, it was wrong. But I understand your position, and I am going to give what I have to pull you out of that. But I am still going to ask you to take responsibility. This is a loan. Pay it back. Which, by the way, he did. He sent it back. He sent money back to the White House. And so we find in here, give to those who beg from you. Do not expect things in return from those that take from you. That this is a sense of mercy, and that can be very hard. It can be hard to do that. But that is that pulling up to those that we perceive are below us, to extend mercy by understanding their plight and doing work to help level things out. You see, there is this leveling here, this evenness, this plane that mercy seeks to bring. And it costs us something, and it makes us vulnerable, because in mercy, we are not demanding that people abide by our mercy. We are simply extending it to them and putting it on their court for them to accept it or reject it. That's the cost of mercy. That's the vulnerability of mercy. But it has the power to bring about transformation. It has the ability to stop someone in the way that they are acting and living their life, both on high and beneath, to wait them to say, whoa, wait a minute, and to reassess and take the opportunity to be restored. One of the most powerful and beautiful images of mercy is that story in Genesis that we read about Jacob and Esau, right? Two brothers, twins, fighting from the very beginning. They were at each other in the womb, right? And Jacob is always there getting at Esau. He latches on to his ankle when they are born. I'm right there. I'm always going to be on your hill, he's saying. And they're always at each other. And Jacob swindles his brother Esau out of his birthright, gets him to sell his birthright. He steals his blessing, tricks his own father to steal his blessing. They're always at each other. And Esau was furious. Esau was ready to kill Jacob. Literally, he was ready to kill him. That's why Jacob had to leave. He ran away. Spent time. But he couldn't run forever. And there was a time when he had to come back home and he had to face his brother. And he knew that his brother had every right to just kill him. And he knew it was going to be a battle. And guess what? Esau showed up with an army. And so Jacob takes everything that he has and puts it in front of himself so that there's all these other things in between him and his brother. Jacob, I know he's a patriarch, but he's a scoundrel. That's why there's good news for us. Because if he's celebrated, there's news for us. But he takes everything, all of his possessions, all of his family, and puts it out there. And I think his thought is, maybe Esau will be tired of taking and killing by the time he gets to me. But Esau won't play on that. He wants to see his brother. And they come face to face. And everything there is in Esau's hand. He's got a bigger army. He has justice to be able to take it out on his brother. But instead of offering his brother a fist, he opens up his arms and takes him back. He forgives him. And what does Jacob say? What does he say it looks like? When I saw your face, I saw the face of God. Be merciful like your Father in heaven is merciful. Jesus is saying. When we are merciful, we look like God. We are being like God. And we know how much God risks and how much God, the God of the universe, is ready to be vulnerable in order to bring us into right relationship. That's what mercy is doing. From those above us to those we perceive beneath us, we are extending vulnerability to bring them into a relationship. A right relationship. We can do it. But it cost us. So where can we show mercy? Do you have anybody at work that likes to lord things over you? Or is a rival? Or just likes to get at you? Do you have neighbors that cause trouble? That are a pain sometimes? What about family? What about friends? Look where we are. We don't have to go far. We don't have to go far to find the places where we can be merciful. And as a country, we need someone to take the steps to be merciful. You want to know a daring place to be merciful? What about politics? What about our political system in our country that we're all involved in? We don't see a lot of mercy there, do we? Because mercy, they believe, and we believe, doesn't get us what we want. Because hate is so much more of a motivator than anything else. And I'm talking on all sides here. Don't think that I'm picking on one side or the other. It's all there. We have decided in our political system that the best way to motivate people is to get you to hate the other side and tell you why you should despise the other side. Because if we can get you to hate and despise the other side, that provides momentum. And that's all we do. That's all we read about in the newspapers. That's all we see on the TV. That's all we hear from the political system is how we ought to hate the other. Isn't it time for mercy? Isn't it time? For those of us that receive the mercy of God can start modeling what mercy might look like even in the political system. That means we listen. That means we give. That means we become vulnerable. It's hard, isn't it? That's hard. Let's be honest about that. But it's what we need. So desperately we need. Be merciful as your Father is merciful. And God is merciful. My goodness, how merciful God is. How many times has God shown me the way and forgiven me for going the wrong way? And God delivers mercy. And it's important for us to get this last parable. The last parable that he finishes up this section with this parable. He says, forgive and you will be forgiven. Give and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be placed in your lap. Here's what he's talking about. Jesus is using this image of going to the market. And when you go to the market, you take a container with you to get which you are buying in Jesus' day. And you would take a container to get your wheat, your grain. And if it is a good merchant, if it's an honest merchant, they will take your container. They will pour the grain into it. And then when it appears to be filled, they will shake it. They will shake it so it will settle in all the empty places. They will press it down because grain, when it's poured in, creates space, empty spaces, and they're pressing down so the empty spaces are filled with grain, shaking it so the empty spaces are filled with grain and pouring more. And it's not just even with the lid, they pour above it. And then you take your apron and you stick it out and they place it in your apron so all the extra can fall into your apron and you don't miss anything. And that is how God acts with mercy. He is going to fill it up. He's going to shake the container. He's going to press it down. He's going to overfill it so it is overflowing with mercy. But here's the trick. It will overflow with the measure that you bring, the measure of mercy that you bring. And if you have been treating people with a thimble size of mercy, then that's what you get. Or a bucket size of mercy. That's what you get. Or a truckload of mercy. That's what you get. Shaken, pressed, and overflowing. God is merciful. And he calls us to be merciful. It's hard. But God can show us the way. So let's be merciful. Because God is merciful. Amen.